Hey dears, this month was absolutely stacked for new book releases that I was super excited about. So I want to go over all the creepy, gothic haunted house books that I read. Starting off with The House of Drought by Dennis Mombauer, and this one centers around a mansion in Sri Lanka that tends to dry out everything in its surroundings as well as everything inside of it. And it basically follows different generations of people encountering or living in this mansion and trying to solve its mystery. And I thought this one was a really cool setting for Gothic because I'm so used to Victorian Gothic set in England or America, so this was such a refreshing change of pace. However, I think what bothered me most about this novella is that it included, I think, at least 5 different points of view for a tiny little story, so I wasn't able to connect with almost any of the characters except for this one pair of twins, and their experiences felt repetitive and tended to bleed together for me. Honestly, this story would have felt so much more focused and worked a lot better for me if it had whittled it down to 2 points of view, so one being most likely the twins in the past, and then one of the groups in the future investigating what happened to the twins. Like there is one documentary film crew. So maybe that. But I've noticed recently, and tell me if it's just me, but I've noticed a lot of unnecessary points of views, with the fervor that just kind of take away from the story. Okay, next we have another eco-gothic, and this is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and this is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's Fall of the House of Usher, and this one centers around a veteran former soldier named Alex who receives news that their childhood friend Madeline has fallen gravely ill. So Alex rushes to Madeline's home in the remote countryside and has discovered that there's strange mushrooms and the wildlife there appears possessed. So Alex has to figure out the mystery of the manor before it consumes everything around it. And this story was one of my most hyped horror releases of the year. However, it was a huge disappointment, and I think that boils down to the narrator's tone. Alex has so much British humor, and everything is sarcastic, and I don't feel the urgency or they care at all for their best childhood friend. It just kind of baffled me, and I don't get kind of any sort of emotion until later in the story where we finally get into Alex's PTSD from the war, and I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to make this story compelling and for me to care about anything that's going on. There are some moments of creepy fungi horror, but it's buried between so much stuff that doesn't matter at all, and almost I wonder this would have worked out better as a short story. Okay, next we have a Southern Gothic called What Moves the Bones by Elizabeth Kilcoyne, and this one centers around a young woman named Laurel who's a taxidermist who just wants to escape her past. However, following her mother's death, she returns home to her sleepy family farm. However, it might not be so sleepy after all, because the bones from her taxidermy collection start waking up, and Laurel has to try to unravel her mother's dark past to try to protect everyone in that town. And the writing in this story is absolutely gorgeous. It is so atmospheric. You can feel the summer heat of Kentucky, and there's also a lot of body horror and just creepy woodsy vibes. But I think this story was terribly marketed, so it's published under a YA imprint. However, the main characters, the friend group, are repeatedly referred to as adults throughout the novel. Laurel's a college dropout, they're dealing with adult issues, and I feel like this story would be more relatable to people my age. So from your 20s to 30s. So going into this, just expect more of an adult feeling novel, and if you like kind of the Southern Gothic vibes and aesthetic of Ghostwood Song or Summer Suns, I think you'll like this one as well. Okay, the next one is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey, and this one I think I'd best describe as a domestic thriller meets haunted house story. It centers around Vera, who is the grown-up daughter of a serial killer, and she just wants to have nothing to do with her parents anymore. However, when her dying mother asks her to go back to her family childhood home, she obeys to help her clean it up. However, as she's going through her old belongings, it starts dredging up old painful memories and sentimental ones as well. And she starts finding notes from her now deceased father. And she's wondering, is someone leaving these for me? Or is it my father's ghost? And FYI, one other detail I do need to mention is that there is a live-in medium artist who's home. So she's wondering if that new artist is playing tricks on her. And I feel like this novel basically captures a messed up, dysfunctional family so well, and complicated relationships. Kind of ironically, it was Vera's serial killer father who was kinder to her and he was protective of her, and then her mother was jealous of their relationship. So they have this very strained dynamic, and it just kind of bubbles over now that the two of them are back together. I think it's the ending that I feel conflicted about, and also I really hated the artist character. He felt like a caricature to me, and I felt like almost if he had been removed from the story, it would have focused more on Vera reliving her past and confronting her past, and he just kind of detracted from the story for me. Okay, last but not least, we have The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, and the story is a retelling of, you guessed it, the island of Dr. Moreau. So the story centers around Carlotta Moreau, who is the daughter of a mad scientist, and they all live together in the remote Yucatan Peninsula with her father's human-animal hybrid experiments. However, their fragile peace is disturbed when one of the local landowners and their benefactor demands that they start providing workers. And on top of that, their benefactor's son, Eduardo, begins to take interest in Carlotta, so her world starts changing. So this story is told from 2 points of view. So we have Carlotta, and then we also have Montgomery, who is a hunter and overseer who is an aide to Dr. Moreau. And I really liked Montgomery's character here. He has a tortured past, he's filled with regret, and he uses alcohol to self-medicate, but he secretly has a kind heart. I also really like Carlotta's character development. She starts off as naive and isolated because her father's home is all she's ever known. But slowly she starts gaining her independence and starts questioning her father's authority. And I do want to point out that this story very much feels like a historical drama or historical mystery with some light sci-fi elements. It very much focuses on colonialism and the caste system during 1800s Mexico. So if you liked The Hacienda, I think you'll like this one as well. I think for me personally, this boils down to personal preference, but I would have liked to see more horror in it. The original has, it's kind of gruesome. It has live vivisections and creepy mad scientist vibes, and I would have liked more of that here. I think there's only one scene that was creepy, and it brought up alchemy and chimeras, and I was like, ooh, I'm getting Full Metal Alchemist vibes here, and I wish it had done more of that. But again, that's just me because I'm a very avid horror lover. All right, that's a wrap for the books I read this month, and I'm going to be honest here and say that a lot of the books that I've read so far for new releases, I've been extremely disappointed in, and I feel like this is a part of a systemic problem. I feel like a lot of the senior editors have been fired or they've quit due to being overworked and understaffed and underpaid, and I feel like what we're seeing now is a consequence of that. So I really hope that the publishing industry starts regrouping. I have heard that I think HarperCollins in UK is finally getting a union, so hopefully we'll start seeing change and the editors and the writers and the readers will all get what they deserve.